live here on What Your Money Would Say. I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
And on What Your Money Would Say, we like to take financial ugly ducklings and turn them into financial swans. But what does it mean to be a financial swan? It means to sleep well at night. And that's why I started my wealth management firm, Swan Capital, help families sleep well at night.
And similar to Andrew, that's one of the reasons that I started my law practice, the law offices of Scott Malik, was because I wanted to help my clients do timely planning for untimely events.
And one of those timely events that just, again, catches everyone by surprise is when you're having to take care of an elder loved one or an elder spouse. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Again, there's millions of Americans that have to take care of these loved ones, and it's expensive. You know, we're going to talk about the state of health care. And we're also going to talk about exclusively on how VA benefits can help offset some of those expenses. So let's jump right into it, Scott, with the state of health care.
So, the state of healthcare, everybody knows, we talk about it all the time, the cost of healthcare, it's always in the news, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's the rising cost of insurance, long-term assisted living or skilled nursing facilities, home healthcare are not, apart from that. The cost of those services is only going up. The average.
And people's incomes are not going up. You know, Social Security went up, 0.3% this year?
Yeah, I had a client that told me that I think her
Social Security check,
it went up like $2. So
yeah, $2 is not going to help you.
It's not going to cut it. So it's extremely important to understand that there are ways to plan and prepare for these costs because these facilities, with the exception of Medicaid facilities, are private pay institutions.
Which means people got to literally take the money out of their pockets, the money out of their savings to pay for it. And that is one of the biggest misconceptions is people think that TRICARE, they think that Obamacare or their Medicares are going to pay for assisted living. And the reality, it doesn't. And some people say, I'm so anti-assisted living, I want to stay in my own home. Well, that's only going to be covered by Medicare just for a short while, and then that's going to be private pay as well.
And I think a lot of people have that feeling because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what assisted living facilities are. I hear people talk to me all the time, well, I don't want to put my dad in a home. And, they have this idea that what they see in the movies or on TV that they're going to be parked in a corner facing the wall.
Hollywood portrays
exactly.
it as not a nice place.
I have a lot of – I know Andrew has clients too that are in assisted living facilities, and, they're exercising daily. They're interacting with their
walking
friends.
2 miles a day.
Walking.
Yeah, it's definitely not prison.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, we're going to be talking about veterans benefits that pay up to $2,120 a month tax-free. So if you're a veteran or a widow of a veteran, you definitely want to tune in because these benefits can affect you and your loved one's retirement. And so this is a live show, so if you have any questions throughout the show, you can call the station at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. So let's jump right into the numbers. If you need home health care, it's going to start off as one of the cheapest options. If you're paying Susie, who's your neighbor, or you're paying a loved one, it can start off at $10, $15 an hour. And so we have families that are only paying $500 a month. That's manageable. But if you need it around the clock, it's about $24,000 a month.
It gets extremely expensive. I don't know about 24,000. I'm sure there's
13,000 if you need times two for two people. But typically, anywhere from $500 to $13,000 a month. It's pretty pricey.
Yeah, and he's exactly right. I have a client that it was paying actually $17,000 a month because luckily she could afford it.
And that's a month.
It's a month, but she was just adamant about staying in her house, and she wanted to make sure that her plan expressed the fact that she wanted to stay in her house, and so she was willing to do that, and that's one of the things. But a lot of people don't have that luxury,
right? And so then they have to start looking at assisted livings, which assisted livings on average here in Pensacola, Florida, is is about $3,500 a month for one person, and that's a range from $2,000 to $5,000.
And you got to remember also that at most assisted living facilities, that just takes into account room and board. It doesn't if you're having help with your prescriptions, you're having
what we call levels of care.
Yeah, there's different levels that can increase that cost as well.
And if there's two of you, you got a second person fee.
Exactly. And so it can be extremely important to find ways to help pay for this cost, because as Andrew has said, it does get burdensome on people that haven't planned for it.
Now, if you're in skilled nursing, which is, again, a higher level of care, that can be upwards of $7,500 a month. Again, not cheap at all. And so, again, that's one person. And until you basically spend down all your assets, Medicaid's not going to kick in at all. Now, if you're a spring chicken listening to this and you're in your 60s, right, you're thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me. Well, if you're in assisted living paying $3,500 a month, in 10 years, that's going to be $5,297. Again, that's a lot of money, and that's going to eventually outpace a lot of people's income.
And again, we talked about it a little bit briefly earlier, is, cost of living adjustments are not maintaining with the cost of level of increase in healthcare. You said 4 to 5% is what healthcare is going up, and cost of living adjustment for Social Security was 0.3% this year.
Yeah, there's definitely a disparity right
exactly.
there.
So if you're not planning and preparing for the cost, it's gonna overwhelm you. That's just the reality of the situation.
So let's move on to some solutions. We know that healthcare is expensive. So how do you combat it? Well, you look for all the benefits that are available. And one of those benefits that our nonprofit, the Veteran Benefit Project, helps families assist them with VA applications for veteran aid and attendance. Veteran aid and attendance is not a new benefit. They actually created in 1951 to help offset assisted living, skilled nursing, and home health care expenses for wartime veterans and their spouses. So it's been around for a while. Now, I'll tell you my personal story. I didn't find out about these benefits till about 5 years ago. What happened was my grandfather, who was my hero, he was about 93 at the time, and we were sitting in his living room, and he said, Andrew, I want you to read this for me. And so I started reading through this really hefty packet, and it was the news that these long-term care benefits that he'd been paying into for the last 20 years. Again, my grandfather grew up in the Great Depression, so he paid his bills always on time, very frugal, and unfortunately they were having insolvency issues, so they weren't sure how long they could continue paying the same benefits. So he was concerned. He's like, how do I make sure that your Nana and me are going to be taken care of? I said, well, I'll have to go start looking for what VA benefits are out there. And if you've ever applied for VA benefits or know someone, it can be a lengthy process. You have to search under every stone. And so when I found out about aid and attendance, I'm like, wow, this is the best thing since sliced bread. So I shared it with the radio show back then, and it went viral. And now we help about 250 families every year. So it's really exciting, what we get to help families do.
And so I think it's important that we kind of segue into what the actual aid and attendance benefit is, what we're going to be talking about with regards to the requirements for becoming eligible for those benefits.
Absolutely.
So,
and let's start off with the monetary benefits. Again, if you're just tuning in what your money would say, we're talking about veterans benefits that help offset health care expenses. This is a benefit that pays up to $2,120 a month tax-free for a veteran and spouse, and $1,149 for a widow of a wartime veteran.
Exactly. I mean, it's a huge benefit, especially since we talked about, the average cost. If you're living in an assisted living facility and, you're paying out $3,500 to $4,000.
You need all the help you can get.
Exactly. And if you're eligible for $2,120 a month, I mean, you just cut your costs in half. And so it's a really huge benefit. And a lot of people don't know this benefit's out there, which is.
And if they do, they think they're not eligible.
Exactly. And so I want to go through the qualifications really quick.
Starts off with the first one, Scott.
So the first one is you have to be honorably discharged. And so, there's a lot of veterans here. I mean, very infrequently do I come across a veteran that's been dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, I mean, we deal with a lot of men and women that served our country very honorably. So, there's multiple different kinds of discharges. So as long as you don't have a dishonorable discharge, then you would meet the first eligibility requirement. The next one has to do with length of service. And again, Scott and I know that we see so many people that say, Andrew, I didn't serve 30 years like your grandfather. I only served, 1 year, and I don't even know what a machine gun looks like. Well, with this benefit, you only have to serve 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period. And you have to serve during a declared state of war. which we're going to get into those wartime dates in just a little bit, but 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period.
And that's why I think it's important for people to understand that a lot of more people qualify for this than think that they do, based on that one. Because as Andrew said, a lot of people will come into my office and say, oh, I don't qualify because I didn't serve, several years, or I didn't serve, like he said, 30 years. But it's really important to understand it's only 90 days active duty with at least 1 day during a wartime period. And the next requirement is that you have to be either disabled or over the age of 65.
Which is, our youngest, client's 52. I mean, a lot of people are nearing that stage of life, a great stage and a great chapter of life. Or you may have a disability like early onset dementia that causes you to need some health care. Or age 65. Now, again, I want to emphasize on that 90 days active service. Remember that you don't have to have a combat injury. Remember that you do not have to go overseas. You never had to step foot in Vietnam or the Korean War over there in that conflict. You just had to serve during that period of time. The next is you have to have a medical need or help with your ADLs. Scott, what's an ADL?
So what ADL stands for is Activities of Daily Living. And what that means is if you need help, doing your laundry or bathing or preparing your meals or just, the things that the average person does on a daily basis.
But as we get older, we just need some assistance.
Exactly, and that's where the medical need really comes into place, and the need for the assistance with those activities of daily living.
Exactly. And so these are some of the qualifications that exist for veteran aid and attendance. And again, a lot of families disqualify them because they think they make too much money or they have too much assets. And it's a sad reality. We help families that make $9,000 a month in pension income. And then we help families that have to borrow $500 a month from their children. And then we deal with families that have $4.2 million in assets, and we deal with families that have, again, $1,000 that was deposited by their daughter. Again, if you potentially meet some of these eligibilities and think that you're eligible, I encourage you to call our office and see if you're eligible. You can do that by calling 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. And remember, this show is live. So if you have some questions, if you're thinking about that question, someone else probably is too. So on this Saturday morning, if you have a question about veterans benefits and how you can help pay for your assisted living, skilled nursing costs, or even home health care for you or a loved one or a spouse, call the radio station at 478-3116. Hope I don't cause any fender benders here, so I'm going to repeat that number again. That's 478-3116. And we'll be happy to answer your question live on the air. Again, if you're thinking about it, someone probably else is too. So let's jump into some statistics that we found that actually nearly 2 million veterans or their widows are likely missing out on as much as $22 billion a year in pensions. And so my point here is that Congress has set aside $22 billion for these VA benefits to be paid out to our military and past military. And the sad reality is these dollars never get in the hands of the people that deserve it.
And one of the biggest things that I always make sure that I talk about is that a lot of the times widows are the ones that are hit hardest. And because if you're a widow of a veteran that qualified for these benefits, you can qualify yourself by him or her meeting that qualification. So even if you didn't serve but your spouse did, you can still be qualifying for these benefits, and those are the most underserved beneficiaries.
Well, it's a complete shock to them, Scott. You think I've was married 7 years ago, and you're a widow, and for the last 7 to 10 years, no one has knocked on your door and said there's potential new income out there. You've probably lost one of the Social Security checks. You might have lost a percentage of a pension. And when you find out that there's $1,149 a month tax-free that the VA will pay for healthcare expenses, that's huge. Now, again, I want to highlight that these benefits are monetary in that they pay out a monthly benefit that's tax-free to help offset healthcare. Again, for a veteran and spouse, it's $2,120 a month, tax-free. For a veteran single, that's if a veteran was single, divorced, never married, that's $1,788 a month.
And it also, if it's just the veteran that his spouse or her spouse had passed away, and the veteran is the one that's still living and needs the care, they're eligible for that too.
That's right. And so, again, these benefits go a long way. You remember we were talking about in the beginning that the state of health care, I mean, the average cost of assisted living is $3,500. So you think about a veteran single that can get $1,788, that's like half the cost a lot of times. So it really does help out. I do want to go over those wartime service dates. A lot of people say, I think I'm on the cusp of the Korean War conflict. I might be in the Vietnam era. Let's go over those dates, starting with World War II. If you have a loved one that served from December 7th, 1941 to December 31st, 1946, that makes them a World War II veteran.
And a lot of people get that confused because most people think that World War II ended in 1945, which it did.
Right.
Depending on the surrenders, you have either, most of the time it's August of 1945.
Yep.
But as Andrew, I'm sure, will inform you, is the reason that it's December 31st, 1946 is because the Veterans Administration expanded those those dates in order to make sure that they got in people that were early or late.
Yeah, because a lot of those people knew that they potentially could be going into that conflict and definitely raise their hand to go in. And the last thing we want to do is cut them out for the benefits that are owed to them. And then you have the Korean War conflict. That was from June 27th, 1950 to January 31st, 1955. And then you have Vietnam, which was August 5th of 1964 to May 7th, 1975. And then you have the Gulf War, which was August 2nd, 1990, and still is going on to this day. So we have the Iraqi freedom that's still continuing on, along with other conflicts we have to take care of. So again, if you serve 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period, you meet the military qualification. And so if you want to find out if you're eligible for veteran aid and attendance or a loved one, an uncle, again, call our office at 850-380-5137. And what we'll do is go through an intake. An intake is basically where we look at the VA administration's outlined, what they say you have to meet to get these benefits. And we compare it to your personal situation in a very confidential setting. And we say, yes, you're a candidate, or no, you're not at this time. Maybe you will be when this changes. And that way you're eligible or a loved one's eligible. And you can start collecting and have these documents collected. Tell them, Scott, about how many times we do crisis planning.
Well, the reality is that most of the time when I do planning at all, with my practices, it's always crisis planning. And that's not to blame anyone, but most people don't plan ahead. I mean, most people don't even know what they're having for dinner tonight, let alone think
Very
about,
true.
Planning 5 years down the road for potentially having to go move mom or dad into an assisted living facility or a skilled nursing facility. That's not really at the forefront of their minds. And so the reality is that people come into my office or give me calls and they say, Dad's moving into assisted living tomorrow.
Welcome back to What Your Money Would Say. So on today's show, we're talking about veterans benefits, in particular veteran aid and attendance, to help play for benefits to help offset assisted living, skilled nursing, and home health care expenses. And again, this show is live, so we want to welcome Bill to the show. Bill, welcome to What Your Money Would Say.
Thank you very much. Just short and sweet. What were the dates for Vietnam again, please?
I'd be happy to repeat those. So for Vietnam, it was August 5th of 1964 to May 7th of 1975. And since you brought it up, we'll repeat them all. World War II is December 7th, 1941, December 31st, 46. So it's that period of time. And then Korean War is June 27th, 1950 to January 31st, 1955. So, Bill, if you served at least 90 days active service with at least 1 day during a wartime period, then you'll definitely meet those criteria.
Thank you very much for your help. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Bill. Thanks for your question. Bye. So, again, remember, this show is live. If you have a question about veterans benefits, we encourage you to call the station at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. So, again, if you're just tuning in to What Your Money Would Say, we've talked about the state of health care. The average cost of assisted living is $3,500 a month. it's not getting any cheaper. It's increasing at 4.3%. That's a lot of momentum headed in the wrong direction of increasing costs. Yet Social Security is only increasing at 0.3%. So how do you combat that? Well, you find out what benefits are available. If you have a loved one that's going to skilled nursing, that's $7,500 a month. Again, those costs are not getting cheaper. So I'd like to recap on some of those eligibility requirements that we talked about. If you think that you might meet some of these eligibility requirements, I encourage you to schedule an intake. An intake, again, is a 15 to 30-minute meeting with someone in my office. It's a free meeting, just like the VA application that we help families apply for is free. And that's 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. So, Scott, start us off again with those eligibility requirements to make sure that everyone has heard them.
Absolutely. So the first one that we always talk about is that you have to be honorably discharged. And that, like I said earlier, I work with a lot of veterans that served our country very honorably and were great servicemen, and they still live as great citizens today. So as long as you were not dishonorably discharged from the service, you will meet that requirement.
Perfect. And then the next one has to do with length of service.
Exactly. And so we kind of just mentioned those dates again for Bill that called in, and you have to serve at least 90 days active duty with at least 1 day during a wartime period. And those wartime periods were the ones that we just went over with Bill. And then the next one is you have to either be disabled or over age 65. And then the last one is you have to have a medical need or need with your activities of daily living. And we kind of went over briefly earlier what those activities of daily living were. They can be, whether it's doing your laundry, changing your bed sheets, maybe bathing, cooking, maybe preparation of or dealing with medications. Those are all things.
Yeah, just to name a few. So now remember, there is 4 benefits, and this is based on marital status. We have families that walk from all walks of life. And so this one covers, the first one, for any of those veterans that have never been married. Maybe they've been divorced. Maybe they're a widow themselves. But this veteran that's looking, again, a lot of times we're in our 80s and 90s looking at these expenses, and they're saying, it's going to be $3,500 to $4,000 a month. How am I going to pay for this? My assets will only last for so long when I'm paying $4,000 a month. So when we can share with them that they can receive up to $1,788 a month tax-free for the rest of their life, I mean, it really does change their life. And we're so happy and proud and honored to truly to help these veterans get these benefits. And, Scott, if you'll tell them a little bit about the widow's benefit.
Yeah, exactly. And, I kind of mentioned this earlier, that this is one of the most underserved areas that I always deal with. And it's typically when –
it's like 60% of the people we apply for.
Exactly. And so it's typically when, a widow of a veteran, whether it's, him or her that was – their spouse was the one that served and met all the qualifications, they don't typically realize that they are actually eligible for at least some kind of benefit. Now, obviously, they're not eligible for the $1,788 a month because they weren't the actual veteran. A widow's benefit is actually $1,149 a month tax-free for the rest of their life that they can be eligible for based on the qualifications of the veteran that they were married to.
And a lot of these widows think, well, I didn't even know him or her while they were in the military. It does not matter. If you're the last spouse they were married to and they unfortunately passed, that makes you a widow of a wartime veteran.
And I kind of want to bring up, he kind of hinted at the last spouse. If you do get divorced from a veteran, you will divorce those benefits as well.
Yeah, and we don't make those rules up.
Yeah, it's just something that the VA decides, and if the widow was if it was the result of a divorce, or if they were the last ones that were married to them, so down the road they got remarried, then the person that they were remarried to would actually become the one that's eligible for the benefit.
Yeah, so we save a lot of marriages. We tell widows, again, if the divorce is on the rise, you just kill them. That way you get your VA benefits. And
I hope that none of you out there take that seriously.
Well, he's a licensed attorney, so he's definitely got to put the disclosure in there. But we have also a third benefit that's huge, and that's the veteran and spouse benefit. And that's $2,120 a month, tax-free. So, again, if you and your loved one go into assisted living, that's $4,000 a month at least, because they're going to add a second person fee of $1,000. So now you're potentially even at $5,000 a month. You got your Social Security or your pension. You need some extra income. And that $2,120 will go on top of your Social Security, on top of any pensions you have. And again, if you think, there's no way I'm eligible for this. I already make $5,000 a month. We help families that make $9,000 a month. We help families that make $500 a month.
One of the common misconceptions is that the income test is there's a cap on the amount that you can make. When
Right.
actually the income test is how much you're spending on non-reimbursed medical expenses versus what your income actually is.
Right.
So if you're spending $8,000 a month on non-reimbursed medical expenses,
It
and
wipes
you're
out
making
your income.
$7,000 a month, you still could be potentially eligible based on all the various other eligibility requirements. But that doesn't disqualify you just because you make $7,000 a month. It's based on how much you're spending out of non-reimbursed medical expenses versus what your income is.
And we've been talking a lot about assisted living. This benefit will pay for you to stay in your own home. If you want to stay in your own home, we want to help you do that. But we want to make sure that you're financially solvent by getting you these benefits. And so please call the station if you have a question. I've always found if you're thinking about it, probably someone else is too. We try to cover everything we can, but we sometimes miss things. So definitely call the show. This is November 19th on a Saturday. You can call at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. You can change your name, and no one will know who you are.
And I think it's also prudent. I don't know if we mentioned this earlier. I know a lot of people call in and they talk about they're already receiving some kind of benefit or their disability benefit from the VA. And so, I have people that come in and say, I'm on 100% disability. If you're on 100% disability from the VA, I will tell you that you're not going to receive this benefit.
Yeah, you're already maxing out the system.
Exactly. And so there are things that I have also had people come in there on 30% disability.
Or 10% hearing loss.
Exactly. And so what the VA does is, if you are eligible for this benefit and you already are receiving a disability benefit from a combat wound or whatever you received, this benefit will be reduced by the percentage of disability that you're already receiving.
Exactly. And so that's very powerful for the family that's been struggling to get 30% for the last 2 years, and we can help them get VA benefits in 3 to 4 months for the other percentage. It's really exciting. I think sometimes, Scott, that families just don't realize how strong these benefits really are. These benefits is basically like $500,000. And what I mean by that is if you look at the veteran single benefit, which pays $20,000 a year tax-free, that's like having $500,000 in a CD earning 4% interest.
I don't know any CDs that earn 4% interest.
Yeah, it's a lot harder to get 4% interest, so you're exactly right. So I'm being very generous. So, again, these are strong, solid benefits that help offset any of the concerns about how to pay for someone to stay in their own home, assisted living, and skilled nursing. And I encourage you to call our office for that free intake. Again, we don't charge a fee for the VA application. We don't get any money on the backside. It's just a community service that we do for families. And you can call to schedule that intake at 850-380-5137. That's 850-380-5137. And, again, what you'll do is you'll leave a message, and Denise in our office will call you back to schedule that intake to see if you meet those eligibility requirements during those intakes.
And if you have a question right now, as Andrew said, we are live, and you can give the radio show a call at 478-3116. Again, that's 478-3116.
And we'll be happy to answer it live on the air. So I do have one warning out there for you, and that warning is do not apply without trained assistance. I can't tell you how many stories families said, we're going to wing it by ourselves. We're going to do it yourself. And we say, hey, again, you don't have to have us help you. You can, go straight to the VA if you like. But the problem is if you're not filing all the correct paperwork, if you're not giving all the supporting documents, you're really causing yourself more pain. This is why you hear stories of families go a year, 2 years of not getting VA benefits, is because they didn't have all the forms put together correctly, and they didn't give all the supporting documents. And you remember this show is live, so if you have questions about VA benefits, you can call the radio station at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. To prove it's live, Dave, welcome to What Your Money Would Say.
Yes, sir. What if your situation is really long, like since 74?
What do you mean?
That's when I got out of the Marine Corps. I got hurt pretty bad, and all I got was pushed around, and then all of a sudden the records got lost.
Yep.
And then I let it go for years, and then one day, Mr. White from Tallahassee called me about 2 or 3 years ago on my birthday, February 7th, and he says, "Why didn't you file your claim?" I said, "I did." And some lieutenant says, "Well, denied," and boom. And I let it go. He says, "Well, according to our records, we owe you for all these years," and it's like $856,000 at that time.
Wow.
I says, "Really?" I says, "Well, can you send that over?" I said, "No, wait, I'll get a ride. I'll get somebody to drive me down here." He says,
That's
"No."
awesome. So, if you don't mind me asking, what percentage disabled are you?
Well, right now I can barely walk. I don't think I'll make it to my next birthday. Everything's falling apart. And
Are you 100%
something-
disabled under the VA?
no, they wouldn't. They never even got to see me. I
They
never saw a
didn't. They
doctor.
didn't. Okay. So again, this is a benefit that you definitely want to check into because you probably heard us go through all the qualifications.
Yeah.
So if you have trouble getting the paperwork, we can help you. There's ways to request it, and if that falls through, then we'll go with the best dates possible that we have.
I will tell you that typically we only work with this benefit though. So if you're looking to try to get
service-connected benefits,
that
yeah.
service-connected benefit, or the backlog of
we don't
whatever.
personally handle that, but we do have a contact here locally that does a great job in doing that. So what I would encourage you to do is call Dave, the office at 850-380-5137. And what we'll do is, one, we'll make sure you're eligible for this benefit. And if you have a shot at those service-connected benefits, that other gentleman will let you know that we can refer you out to.
That would be wonderful. I'm living on $10,000 a year, and I'm doing better than most. You wouldn't believe how many guys are up under the bridge here.
It's very sad. I mean,
they're walking around with a chest full of ribbons.
Is for veterans is an epidemic. And again, we only handle this benefit, but there's a lot of benefits available. And if we don't know about that, if we don't handle that benefit, we'll point you in the right direction. So I encourage you to call, and we'll take good care of you.
Where did they burn $9 trillion, or was it $9 billion they got for this? In 6 months, it was gone, and nobody got nothing. But they got new office furniture and paintings and stuff, and everybody got a pay raise.
Yeah,
and we've never accused the VA of being great money. They do a lot of good work,
and there's a lot of good people there that work there. The problem is they're just understaffed. And they got stacks of claims, and when someone retires, they don't replace them. They just say, "Here's double the workload."
Yes.
So
and it becomes very cumbersome.
So
Their papers.
Yeah,
I love that paperwork.
That's right, and that's why the Veteran Benefit Project exists. Is just trying to help out where we can in the community. So again, thank you so much for your question, Dave.
Well, God bless you. Thank you. You're doing a good job.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.
So, again, if you're just tuning in What Your Money Would Say, I'm your host, Andrew McNair.
And I'm your co-host, Scott Malik.
And so on What Your Money Would Say, we dive deep into topics that affect you during your retirement, as well as in estate planning, which is what Scott does as an estate planning and elder law attorney. And so one of the topics we're talking about is how to pay for long-term care expenses. Again, it's not getting any cheaper. If you want a caregiver in your own home, it's going to be $10 to $15 an hour. It's going to start off cheap at $500 a month potentially, and go up to $13,000 a month. You're going to look at assisted living, that's $3,500, and in just 10 years, that's going to be $5,297. Again, these costs aren't getting cheaper, so that's why you have to be creative and looking what benefits are out there for you. And so if you're potentially eligible for these benefits of up to $2,120, a lot of families think it's going to take a long time for them to get their VA benefits.
And that's because, as Dave just mentioned,
that's the reality.
The VA has a lot of paperwork that they deal with, and if you don't give them everything they're looking for, the process can take long, extended periods of time. And so I think that's why, having someone that's trained and knowing what they're going to ask for is such an important, aspect of what we do. Is the Veteran Benefit Project has created a systematized application to provide the VA with every single piece of documentation that they're going to ask for.
And this isn't our first rodeo. We've literally helped families get paid out over $51 million in benefits. And we apply for, 200 plus people a year. And since Scott's VA accredited, again, you do this once in a lifetime. We help people do it every day. So when we apply for the VA, I want people to know it is retroactive. So if you have a loved one that needs these benefits, or you're going to potentially need it for you and your spouse, it could take 6 to 12 months, but it is retroactive. Now,
I want to clarify that it's retroactive to the date of application.
correct.
It's not retroactive to the date of entering assisted living or skilled nursing facility or receiving home health care. I want you to make sure that you understand that, and that's not we don't
make the rules.
That's
here.
the attorney in me,
and that's why it's imperative that you come in and apply. Now, on average, it does take us only about 3 or 4 months, but we tell people it can take up to longer times, and sometimes our fastest claim was actually 2 weeks. So you never know how fast they're going to go, whose desk it gets on, but we will help you get all the paperwork that's necessary put together. I'll tell you a little bit about the process and how it works. What we do first off is we schedule an intake. An intake is, again, a 15 to 30-minute meeting where we sit down with a veteran or their widow or even their power of attorney for a loved one. There's many veterans and widows I've never met, but we've helped them get their VA benefits. And so we sit down and we say, here's the VA eligibility requirements, and here's your personal situation. Congratulations, you're a great candidate. Or, no, unfortunately not at this time, but if this and this change, you're going to be a perfect candidate. And I can tell you so many stories where people just say, wow, their shoulders drop and they say, this is awesome. Now I don't have to worry about, how I'm going to make ends meet when this stage of life happens. And so, again, if you want to find out if you're eligible, I encourage you to schedule an intake. If you have a question like Bill and Dave did earlier, I encourage you to call the radio station. Call right now. It's November 19th. You can call at 478-3116. That's 478-3116. If you're thinking about it, someone probably else is as well. So I'd like to, just recap. We've talked about the state of healthcare. We've talked about how there's up to $2,120 a month in VA benefits that are eligible for families. And we also talked about how you apply. And again, it's a process. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take a short commercial break, and then we're going to look at how do you plan for going into assisted living so you don't go broke.